Next layer is realizing that there is no escaping the consequences of your history, and realizing that those consequences are in fact being imposed upon you right now, especially in America, but in Europe too. I mean, look at Europe. It's falling apart. Europe is falling apart. They're going extinct, and even their own natural extinction isn't fast enough for them. They're rushing towards war and conflict on the continent. Macron just told hospitals in France that they need to be ready for a European war by next year. War with Russia. They're tearing their own societies apart. They're impoverishing themselves. They're enslaving themselves. They're deindustrializing themselves. They're being asset stripped. Exactly what they did to the people that they colonized. Europe is tumbling into the abyss of their own making. But America, the imperial heir of Europe, the neoliberal economic firing squad of corporate power, they used to spray their bullets like a mass shooter all across the global south, all across the Muslim world, all across Africa, all across so-called Latin America. Well, America is descending into madness. You're descending into madness because you're cursed. That's why I've said you cannot properly analyze geopolitics. You cannot properly analyze geopolitics if you exclude the reality of divine justice. You cannot exclude God from your assessments. You can't exclude Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from your forecasts. And you cannot be as unjust, as brutal, as degenerate, as wicked as America has been, and actually think that the consequences are not going to be severe. You understand? The suffering of whole continents at your hands is going to ricochet back onto America. I said you're cursed. You know it and I know it. That's the truth. We both know this. Because you can't have any sort of religious sense, any religious sense of justice, and not know that. Even if you call yourself a Christian, if you call yourself believing in God in any way whatsoever, you cannot pretend that you don't know that America is cursed, and it has been cursed ever since you all landed over there in the first place and started massacring the indigenous people and stealing their land. What your Zionist brigades are doing to the Palestinians right now is just a fraction of what you did to the Native Americans.
People have been talking about black.
Happy Friday, family. Happy Friday. Welcome back to On the Shoulders of Giants. I am Joseph Ward. Please make sure you hit that like button, comment, subscribe, share, hit that hype button. Let me put it back on the stage. Let me put the thing. As we jump into this video by brother Bolson, Shahid Bolson. That's the brother's name. Divine justice is what he's talking about. Divine justice being brought against the white supremacists, right? And God is going to bring vengeance against all those who have persecuted us, all those who have oppressed us and objectified us and dehumanized us. God is going to bring vengeance upon them. Now, the title of this video is within the title of this video, he speaks about black people being the chosen people and God being the one who's going to bring vengeance. So my question, because I got a lot of questions for brother Shahid in this. My question is, does waiting for divine vengeance create black power, or does it create black passivity? And why do you all think this dude, brother Shahid Bolson, why do you think he is giving us this message? Why do you think he's compelled to give us black people throughout the world, especially black Americans? Why do you think he is compelled to give us this message of divine passivity, of let God handle it? Because God is going to get revenge on all those who enslaved us, even though the revenge ain't really been gotten yet. And like, if America does fall, if the West fall, what does that mean for black people? What does that mean for black people? But does waiting for divine vengeance create black power, or does it create black passivity? So I want to play this part again so we can make sure we hear, but I'm gonna break it down as we go.
Next layer is realizing that there is no escaping the consequences of your history, and realizing that those consequences are in fact being imposed upon you right now, especially in America, but in Europe too. I mean, look at Europe. It's falling apart. Europe is falling apart. They're going extinct, and even their own natural extinction isn't fast enough for them.
Right. So okay. Europe is declining. The West is declining. America is declining. So does that mean we are elevating? Does that mean Black Americans are elevating? And if so, please explain to me how we are elevating in a system, in a climate where we are dependent upon the power system, the power structure, the power group. If America is declining and we are dependent upon them, wouldn't we be declining as well? What real power do we hold as Black Americans? I'm not attacking faith, nothing like that. I'm attacking his logic, because faith without power building has historically failed Black people. His view, I don't like his view of God. I don't like that view there of sit on the sideline and wait for God to come save you. In my opinion, people teach you that because they don't have your best interest. People teach you that because they want to keep you on the bottom. I hear him, but I also hear him because I'm challenging his ideologies, because my thing is, if you really wanted Black people to really become powerful, you will be speaking to us in a manner that helps us build power, actual power, tangible power, real world power, things that we can use right now, rather than just trying to make sure that our faith is so strong. Faith without works is what? Faith without works is dead. Faith without power building has historically failed Black people.
They're rushing towards war and conflict on the continent. Macron just told hospitals in France that they need to be ready for a European war by next year. War with Russia. They're tearing their own societies apart. They're impoverishing themselves. They're enslaving themselves. They're deindustrializing themselves.
And we will be casualties of that because we have no power. We have no structure. We have no institutions. We have not codified ourselves. We have not united under anything, anywhere, on any mass level. We will be cannon fodder. We will be casualties of that. Are you trying to help us, or are you pandering to our religious zealousy and our emotions in this thing? You and even the African guy in this. I have to call y'all out for pandering to us, because as a Black American, me having faith that God gonna come get vengeance ain't helping me. My ancestors been having that same faith. My ancestors had that same faith 300-400 years ago, and we still here. Give me something tangible I can work with.
They're being asset stripped. Exactly what they did to the people that they colonized. Europe is tumbling into the abyss of their own making. But America, the imperial heir of Europe, the neoliberal economic firing squad of corporate power, they used to spray their bullets like a mass shooter all across the global south, all across the Muslim world, all across Africa, all across so-called Latin America. Well, America is descending into madness. You're descending into madness because you're cursed. That's why I've said you cannot properly analyze geopolitics. You cannot properly analyze geopolitics if you exclude the reality of divine justice.
Okay, so let's say, okay, America is cursed. So how is that curse benefiting us? How has the curse benefited us? Are you sure America is cursed? And when you say America, you mean like white Americans are cursed? Are you sure? Because if you call what's happening to them and their conditions and what they've been able to do, if that's a curse, then what happened? What are you calling that we're experiencing? If that's the curse, what's worse than the curse? Like, y'all help me. What's worse than the curse? Because that must be what we're experiencing. If white America is cursed, I don't even know the word that we would use for something that is worse than the curse. You know what I'm saying? I don't even know what word we would use for that. But that's what will be happening to us if white America is cursed. Are we serious? You telling us that to help what? To say what? To move us to what space? How does telling us America is cursed help us build power?
You cannot exclude God from your assessments. You can't exclude Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from your forecasts. And you cannot be as unjust, as brutal, as degenerate, as wicked as America has been, and actually think that the consequences are not going to be severe. You understand? The suffering of whole continents at your hands is going to ricochet back onto America. I said you're cursed. You know it and I know it.
One of my questions for brother Boson is, he is an Arab. So are the Arabs cursed? Because what's up with the trans-Arab, with the trans-Saharan slave trade that's been going on for over 1,000 years? The Arabs have been stripping Africa of its natural resources via the East for over 1,000 years. Some people say the Arab slave trade been going on for like 1,300 years. So is he including the Arab world in this curse as well? Or is he conveniently forgetting about how the Arabs was able to the African continent as well, or grape the African continent as well? Has he forgotten about that, or he just conveniently leaving that out? If we want to talk about the consequences of God, because God saw that too. God knows that the trans-Saharan slave trade happened as well. God should know about the transatlantic and the trans-Saharan. So is the Arab world cursed as well?
That's the truth. We both know this, because you can't have any sort of religious sense, any religious sense of justice, and not know that. Even if you call yourself a Christian, if you call yourself believing in God in any way whatsoever, you cannot pretend that you don't know that America is cursed, and it has been cursed ever since you all landed over there in the first place and started massacring the indigenous people and stealing their land. What your Zionist brigades are doing to the Palestinians right now is just a fraction of what you did to the Native Americans.
And your people did to people in that area and Africans as well. Trans-Saharan slave trade. The Arab world built up the same way the Western world built up. Graping and pillaging, taking resources from others, dominating others. Come on, man. Let's not act like your people didn't do the same thing.
People have been talking about black people being the chosen generation, or being the chosen people, and all of that. And you know, some people would not want to accept that fact, but that's the truth.
But it just gonna come out and say black Americans are the chosen for what? What are we chosen for? And when is this favor gonna show up? Don't come on this internet and tell me that we chosen and God is gonna come save us. And look at all this stuff we're going through. That's not how God works. Also, I got a big question. If God is going to punish white America for slavery, then what responsibility do black Americans have to secure justice for ourselves? Just think about that. If God is going to punish white America for slavery, then what responsibility do black Americans have to secure justice for ourselves? Because if it's all about waiting on God to come save us, then we have no responsibility. We have no responsibility for changing our conditions, for improving our situation, for becoming a powerful group of people. We have no responsibility for that. And anybody that's trying to convince you of that is your enemy. Anybody trying to convince you of that doesn't want you to build power. We've read 9 chapters, or 9.5 chapters of Blueprint for Black Power so far. 9.5 chapters, and not once has Amos Wilson told us to not build power and wait on God. We've read Neely Fuller's compensatory code. Not once have Neely Fuller told us to not build power and wait on God. Claude Anderson has never told us to not build power and wait on. Matter of fact, how many of our scholars, our real scholars that we actually respect, have ever told us to not build and wait on God to build power? Who's told us that? So why is this brother Shaheed Bolson's message, and why is this African brother right here? Why is it that those messages that they're giving us, right? So we know we've done a couple of videos on Brother Bolson. So no beef, well, a little bit of beef with this, because why are you telling me to sit around and wait on God? Like, that don't sound right. And I need you to point your finger. I need you to say the same thing you saying about the white world, about the Arab world as well. But a lot of his arguments is America accumulated enormous wealth through slavery, same as the Arab world. White Americans collectively benefit from that historical exploitation. God is a God of justice. Nations that commit injustice eventually face judgment, and therefore America cannot escape divine consequences for slavery and racial oppression. And whether one agrees or disagrees, the argument is essentially theoretical rather than political. So it's theory, and it's more theological stuff than actual real historical stuff, right? So the problem with sitting around waiting on God, first of all, God never told us to sit around and wait on him. Every generation of Black Americans, like, they're always telling Black people to sit around and wait on God. They always telling Black people that. But let me let this play a little bit more before I go further. Now,
Black people have gone through difficult moments: oppression, discrimination, segregation, racism, and all of that. And we've seen it happening. We've seen it going on. And even today, some of those things are still happening, or other people are thinking of bringing it back. You know, slavery was one of the most traumatizing things, because people were taken from their land, from their home, from their families. They were taken at a foreign land. They were beaten up. They were forced to wake up in the morning to go and work in white man's land. They were taken back to the cells, and they were placed there, sometimes without food and all of that. It was just bad. It was traumatizing, and it was very much hectic, right, for the Black Americans. Now, there is one thing I want to know. I want you to understand. Everything that went through, everything that happened in the Black people's community during the time of colonization, during the time of colonization in Africa, during the time of transatlantic slave trade, crossing the sea, crossing the ocean, some of them were throwing themselves inside the ocean thinking they can swim back to the country, the continent. During the oppression in America, segregation in America, racism in America, and all of that, trust you me, Black people will not, they have the power to avenge, but they will not take that vengeance by themselves. God is going to avenge for them. All right? That is just one thing that I want you to know. And
you hear him. We have the power. We have the power to avenge, but God is going to avenge for us. We have the power to do it, but God is going to do it for us. So why don't God just empower us? Why don't God just empower us even more for us to do it for ourselves? Because I don't know many groups of people, many real groups of human in real history of the real earth who ever became free without actually having to do some real work for themselves. No matter what they believe, they still had to act on their belief. So we're just supposed to sit back and believe that God, that might be why our situation hasn't improved. That way of thinking, that's a docile way of thinking. That's not a way of thinking of somebody who actually wants to be free. Somebody who actually wants to have liberation.
Somebody who is helping me to put this clear, somebody who is helping me to make this clear is my guest today, Shaheed Bolson. Shide King Bolsen is a person that is helping me to transmit, to air this truth, to air, this truth out right now.
True. Okay.
Look at what is happening today in the United States of America.
Now, hey, this brother finna tell us what's happening over here in the United States. He finna tell us what's happening over here in the United States. All right, let's listen now. Y'all listen up good, because he about to tell us what we experiencing on a regular basis.
In the United States of America today, there are a lot of things that are happening.
Like
and
what?
These things that are happening,
like what?
You might think it's happening by coincidence.
What? Tell us specifically what specifically happened, my brother. Be specific about what's happening.
It is not by coincidence. It is just but a consequence. It is just but the results of what the white supremacists did to the black people during the time of colonization, during the time of transatlantic slave trade, during the time of all the kinds of oppression in America, segregation, racism, being exposed to Jim Crow laws, and all the discrimination and all those things. But black people are not going to take vengeance by themselves. God of black people will take vengeance on their behalf. The people who pretended to be God's servants, to be the ones who were coming in Africa to, preach the gospel, calling themselves missionaries, all right? Those who pretended to be people of good heart and all of that, they came to Africa, they took everything away, they did everything bad, they raped women in Africa, they killed children in Africa, all sorts and kinds of genocides happened. All those things will never go away that way. This so-called empire, it's going to fall, and what is happening is the consequences and repercussions of every single decision that somebody took some time out of ignorance with.
All right, so the problem with waiting, the problem with listening to him, the problem with listening to Brother Shaheed, once again, every group, every generation of black Americans have been told to wait on God. God is coming. It's the end of the world. It's the end times. Wait on God. Wait on God. Wait on God. God gonna come save you. Somebody gonna come save you. It's been over 400 years and ain't nobody came to save us yet. Let that sink in. Reality. It's been over 400 years. Nobody's come to save us. That's not how this works. It's not how God works. They told us somebody gonna come save us during slavery. They told us somebody gonna come save us during Reconstruction, or God is gonna come save us. Justice is coming. Vengeance is coming. During Jim Crow, they said it. They said it during segregation. They said it during mass incarceration. But guess what? The system of white supremacy didn't disappear. It adapted and got stronger. It adapted and got wiser. It still exists. It's still doing this thing. It's still alive and well and kicking. While we're sitting here trying to gas people up from a religious and a godless standpoint of view, and saying, sit back and wait on God to save you. Somebody who's not even in, people who not even in the United States gonna come over here and tell us, hey man, don't build no real power for yourselves. Black people in America, don't build power for yourselves. Just wait on God. That makes me question everything about you and Brother Shaheed. If waiting for divine intervention was enough, then why did black people still have to organize? Why do black people still have to boycott, litigate, educate, and sometimes die for every advancement we gained? I'm gonna ask that a question. I'm gonna ask that question again. If waiting for divine intervention was enough, that's all we gotta do is wait on God to get the little advancements we got. Why did we have to organize, boycott, litigate, educate, and sometimes die? Why? Show me one society, one group of people who became a powerful group of people who was able to pull themselves from under the thumb of oppression, who just sat around and wait on their whoever they believed in to come save them, and that really changed everything for them. Show me that. Look, even the enslaved Africans, even when Africans, like the slaves, when the transatlantic slave trade was active, during slavery, when it was active, it wasn't sitting around waiting on, you had a good number of people wasn't sitting around waiting on God. That's why the Underground Railroad existed. People revolted. People escaped from slavery. They was burning down plantations. Why you think they created all those palenques? They created all those maroon communities. Why do you think they created them? Like, we got historical evidence to show that this don't work for us. The historical communities in Haiti, the historical communities in Jamaica and Cuba and Puerto Rico and South America, all throughout the Americas, all these maroon communities. What are you talking about? Why do we talk about the Haitian Revolution the way we talk about it? The Haitians, I'm glad I mentioned that. I'm glad I mentioned the Haitian Revolution, because the Haitians mixed real world action with their beliefs. The Haitians, their belief in their God spurred them to real world action. And that's how they got that victory in the Haitian Revolution. They didn't sit back and pray and then just wait on something to defeat the French. They went out and they fought. That's why we talk about that's why we revere the leaders of the Haitian Revolution. We revere Nat Turner. We revere Harriet Tubman. We revere Denmark Vesey. We revere Robert Smalls. We revere federal people who stood up and took real actions. Right? Their faith motivated action, not waiting. Nat Turner said he read the Bible, and from that he was inspired to revolt, not sit around and wait.
Without wanting to care or understanding how other people will feel about it, how other people will, see how other people will go through it. It was difficult, it was painful, but what I'm saying is that it is not the work of the black people to take vengeance. Vengeance will prevail, but not through the black community. Black people are good-hearted people. They're going to sit down. They're going to look into all these things happening. They will not be part of it. In fact, you're going to realize that black people are very funny people. They are the ones who have been trying to talk to the white people and telling them, don't do things this way, do it this way. Not because blacks wanted to benefit, but because they wanted America to be a better place. Because they wanted white people not to.
We stood up and fought back. We stood up and fought back. We didn't stay on our knees. We're the most advanced and the most freest group of black people on this planet because we stood up and fought back enough. Talking about we're funny. Talking about we ain't trying to convince nobody. That's called fighting back. While you and your people are sitting around waiting on God to come save you, and it's never going to happen. That's why you and your people are still in the conditions that you all are in. That's why you all have to come over here to advance your lives. Because we chose to fight back. We fight back. And you crazy because you were forgetting your own history. African people fought back on the continent. Your ancestors fought back. What are you talking about? Your own ancestors didn't even sit around and wait on whoever they believed in to come save them. They let their belief fuel them to go fight. What is he talking about?
Suffer. Look at how white people do things with a lot of ignorance, and look at how it is coming back to them, how it's bouncing back to them. All right. So they're going to try to do things. Those things they've been doing won't be working out. And
man, but this buddy don't even know what he's talking about. This buddy watched a whole bunch of online videos and just started to repeat stuff he heard online. That's why this stuff is dangerous, man. But we gonna.
It is because the vengeance is prevailing.
They'll get anybody.
It's taking over, and the vengeance belongs to God, not to the black people. You won't see a black person taking a knife or taking a djembe, taking a gun and shooting somebody or colonizing somebody, but you will see people crying out, kneeling down on their knees, calling, shouting, but nobody will be there to save them. Take a look at this.
He just said it right there. He just said it. Let me let him say it again. He just said it.
Out, kneeling down on their knees, calling, shouting, but nobody will be there to save them.
So what's the point of being down on your knees, calling and shouting and all that, believing that ain't nobody gonna come save you? You don't even know what you're talking about, brother. You just repeating a bunch of talking points. Because they talk about what well, let's let Brother Shahid get to a little more.
Take a look at this video. Tell me what you think about it in the comment section. You know, thank you for coming. Thank you for always being here. If you're watching me for the first time, don't forget to like, don't forget to share, and don't forget to subscribe. All right? Now, let's take a look at this video, and then we'll come back and say more at the end of it.
What Hitler did was a fraction of what you did, in fact. And you really think that you were going to be able to escape the consequences of that? Of course not. Obviously not. Why do you even think for a minute that you could escape the consequences of decimating millions upon millions of people? To think that you would get away with that, wallahi, to even think that you could get away with that, to even think that you would never be held accountable for that is blasphemy. It's blasphemous for you to think that you could get away scot-free. Especially when you have never even done anything ever since then, except to compound the wrongdoing and to add to your record of crimes. You understand me? You have done nothing to atone. You haven't done anything to atone for what you have done. You and I both know that. Genocide, chattel slavery, rape, torture, lynching, murder, dehumanization, discrimination, segregation, exploitation.
One group of wolves trying to call out another group of wolves is funny.
Subjugation, war all around the world. But what sort of a God do you worship that would turn a blind eye to all of that? What kind of a God did you have in mind when you say God bless America? Because I know you're not talking about the God. I know you're not talking about the creator of the universe. Bless America for what? Bless America for what? If you did what you did and then say God bless America, that's just another blasphemy.
Y'all ask y'all God to bless the Arab world.
Well, you're taking the Lord's name in vain when you say God bless America. That's the truth. You can't invoke God to bless what he has prohibited. You can't invoke God to bless what he punishes, to bless what causes his wrath. You have been worshiping someone else entirely, something else entirely. You have taken a whole other being as your God. If you actually think that your actions merit any sort of blessing, no one would bless what you have done as a nation except Iblis. No one would approve of what you have done except for the devil himself. That's why I told you that, and why you need to know. You need to understand this about your society. The West has been worshiping the jinn. They've been worshiping the shayateen ever since prehistory, like I said. And that formed the whole character, the whole ethos of their so-called civilization. You can't properly understand the West if you don't understand that. Honestly, you can't be dismissive about that. And like I said last time, this is in fact exactly why they are almost the only people in the whole world who pretend that the devil doesn't exist. They're almost the only people. They're the only people. The people in the Muslim world, the people in Africa, the people in Latin America, the people in Asia, everyone knows this is real. Even in places like Russia and China, after decades of state-imposed atheism.
Isn't it funny the one group of people who don't believe the devil exists are the people who dominate and control the planet? Isn't that funny? The one group of people, like according to what he just said, going off of what Brother Boson just said, the one group of people who doesn't believe the devil exists actually are in power. The system, because we don't say the system of Asian supremacy, We don't say the system of Arab supremacy. We don't say the system of Indian supremacy. We don't say the system of African supremacy. We don't say the system of Mongolian supremacy or nothing like that. No, South Pacific, no Samoan supremacy. We only say white supremacy. Isn't it funny that the one group of people who don't believe in the devil are the group of people who dominate the globe as far as wealth, warring, and all those ways. They don't dominate in like genetics and actually being better than people, but they dominate the world materially.
Most people there even also still accept this reality. Different people in different places call the jinn different things, sure. Demons, ghosts, fairies, spirits, whatever the case may be. But we know the reality. We know the reality of the unseen. But your so-called civilization insists on denying it. Exactly the same way that they deny everything else that's true about reality, that's true about themselves. While their denial is conspicuous in this way, it's a protective, defensive denial. Because no one else is more closely aligned, in fact, and more subservient to the shayateen as much as your society. So that denial is part of what is expected of you. That's part of the cover-up that is expected of you. And that's just par for the course with you, because anyway, you cover up everything already as it is. Now listen, again, I'm not attacking you. Understand me. Please understand me. If your house is on fire and I come to tell you that your house is burning and you need to get out, are you going to get defensive because you think I'm insulting your house? Use your mind. There's a poison gas leak in your building, and your building manager is trying to tell you that everything is fine, and I'm trying to tell you that it's going to kill you. You tell me which one of us, me or that.
A question that just popped in my mind too. If all these groups of people and all these other groups claim they hate America so much, they're against America so much. So if the sentiment is you want America to fall, America is evil, America needs to go away, why would you be concerned with telling me that my house is on fire? Unless you benefit from my house not burning down.
That manager cares more about you and more about your welfare and your well-being. Don't get mad at me. Well, I think that the gas has already gotten to your brain if you can't think straight enough to know that I'm trying to tell you something for your own good. Look, I'm telling you, there is no way to escape the consequences. Okay? I didn't do this to you. Your ancestors did this to you. Your own ancestors did this to you. Your ancestors and your leaders today. Your media today. Your schools today. Like I said, recognizing and acknowledging the reality of what your ancestors really did and what they really were, and yes, who they really worshipped, understanding that is just the first layer. And as soon as someone accepts this reality, that layer, they just accept that, then they'll jump immediately to, well, how do we make a change? I'm not like my ancestors. Isn't that good enough? How do we make a change so that we can avoid these negative consequences? Because they haven't accepted that second layer, that most important second layer, which is that the consequences cannot be avoided, cannot be evaded, cannot be resisted, and cannot be defied.
I'm glad he said that. I'm gonna leave it right there. I'm glad he said that, and I'm gonna leave that right there. There's a link in the description for the full video, but I just want you to get the breadth of it. Now, even within this video, I think later on in this video, there's an idea. We might have already passed it, but there's an idea that, you know, we are God's chosen people. No, yeah, Buddy said it earlier. We're God's chosen people. And so this is something that a lot of Black Hebrew Israelites, Christians, Muslims, and Pan-Africanists, they talk about. Not all of them, but a good deal of them talking about. They talk about God being, or Black people being God's chosen people. You know, Dr. John Henry Clark already dealt with this. And John Henry Clark said, any God who has a chosen people is a bigot.
Islam was the handmaiden of Arab imperialism. Christianity was the handmaiden of European imperialism. The Hebrew faith was the handmaiden of a concept called the chosen people. Now, if God is kind and God is merciful and God has no stepchildren, he won't choose one over the other. And to say he chose some people, you're making him a bigot. And to say that he endorsed enslavement of one people over the other, you're making him an accessory to murder. The Arabs used Islam to rationalize their slavery and their imperialism. The Europeans used Christianity to rationalize their slavery and imperialism. Who are you kidding about friends in the world? Damn it, if you want a friend, look in the mirror.
Out of Dr. John Henry Clark's mouth, any God that has a chosen people is a bigot. So this idea that we are chosen people, right? So if we are God's chosen people, then why have we suffered some of the most brutal oppression in human history? But once again, if black people are God's chosen people, why have we suffered some of the most brutal oppression in human history? Right? Is suffering our test to prove our faith? Are we being punished for some disobedience that we don't know about? Does the actual suffering prove that we are chosen? And if so, that's strange, because the overall quality of life of us as a people has degraded since the system of white supremacy has been alive. And so if suffering proves that we're chosen, I'm confused about this relationship. It feels like, matter of fact, we are in an abusive relationship, not only with white people, but with the God that we serve. If this is the outcomes, if this is the ideologies, because, we got to ask ourselves too, how does that belief that we have translate into better schools? How does belief that we have in the God that we have, the way we believe, how does it translate into better schools, stronger families, economic power, political influence, and land ownership? I don't know. What I've been taught about God, what I've learned about God is vastly different from what these two brothers are talking about. I don't know. Because history suggests that identity alone does not create power, and waiting on God does not create power. So let's take a look at an angle through like a framework with Dr. Amos Wilson, right? Dr. Wilson asking the question, what will God do? And what are black people organized to do? Thinking about those questions, right? So all right, God gonna come back and fight white supremacy for us. All right, so after that, what are we organized to do? What have we built for ourselves economically? What institutions do we have for ourselves? What real political organization do we have? What kind of psychological liberation or psychological healing do we have to even put ourselves in a position to build anything? What is our overall collective self-interest? Because if our collective self-interest is only waiting on God, then we're in trouble. Waiting for supernatural justice without building earthly power is a losing strategy. Waiting for supernatural justice without building earthly power is a losing strategy. Now, I disagree with James Baldwin a lot, but I agree with him on this. He argued that America's future depended on whether America confronted its history honestly, right? He placed responsibility on people and institutions rather than waiting for divine intervention. Now, where I disagree with him partly in this is, we will never wait on America to confront its history, but we have to take responsibility to make sure that we have what we have for ourselves to put ourselves in a better position. We can neither wait for the white man nor who we believe in to come save us. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is coming to save us. And at this point, we're not even coming to save ourselves. That's the problem. And that's the biggest problem, is we're not coming to save ourselves. And let me ask you this question, because I got a series of questions to ask. Does America change because God punishes it, or because people force it to confront the reality, or because we become powerful enough to make it confront its reality, or we become powerful enough to punish America ourselves? Does America change because God makes it change, or does America change because Black Americans stood up and made America change, or Black people globally stood up and made America change? Questions people have been asking forever. If God is going to avenge slavery, well, slavery is over, like way over. Why hasn't the vengeance happened already? How many more generations of Black people will have to suffer at the hands of the system of white supremacy before God brings vengeance in the way that they're talking about? Does belief in future divine justice make people less likely to pursue personal political justice? If white America is destined to fall, why are Black communities still struggling while many white institutions remain powerful? Because if we're struggling and America falls, we're falling with it, remember. Can people pray their way to power without organization? Can people pray their way to power without organization? My last question is, what has history actually really shown us? Like real history. What it has shown us is that prayer alone does nothing, but prayer plus action will get you some type of change, right? And so I want to take this turn too. Let's look at the Arab slave trade, because Brother Bolson wants to, point his finger at the transatlantic slave trade. So let's look at the Arab slave trade as well, right? Because we learned about the transatlantic slave trade, but we know little about the Arab slave trade, or the trans-Saharan slave trade that was conducted by the Arab, the Ottoman, and other Muslim-controlled states. Historians generally agree that the Arab slave trade lasted longer than the transatlantic slave trade and affected millions more of Africans than the transatlantic slave trade. The Arab slave trade began centuries before the transatlantic slave trade and lasted longer, and it was still going on after the transatlantic slave trade. It started before, it was still going on after. It continued in some religions well into the 20th century, and some of it is still going on today. So, because I got a problem with you pointing the finger at one group and not taking account for what your group did. Because if God is going to bring a vengeance against white Europeans, then God bringing a vengeance against you Arabs as well. Because Africans were transported across the Saharan Desert, the Red Sea, the Indian Ocean, and throughout the Middle East and North Africa. Enslaved Africans were taken to present-day Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Egypt, Oman, Yemen, Iran, Turkey, and a lot of the other regions in the Middle East and Saudi Arabia area. Well, Arabia area, but more throughout the Middle East. Many estimates place the number of Africans enslaved through Arab and Islamic slave trading networks in the millions. Like, let's say if they do 13 million for the transatlantic slave trade, we might have to triple or quadruple those numbers for the Arab slave trade. I might be exaggerating, but I'm just saying, if we're looking at the timeline, looking at the time frame, we might have to double or quadruple those numbers. Exact figures remain debated because records were often incomplete. So let's talk about the scale of human suffering, right? The journey itself, the trans-Saharan routes were notoriously deadly. Enslaved Africans often walked hundreds of thousands of miles, crossed deserts with little water, suffered starvation, died from disease, and died from exposure. Some historians argue that mortality rates on certain desert routes rivaled or exceeded mortality rates on Atlantic voyages. Castration was one of the things that they used. One of the most disturbing aspects of portions of the Arab slave trade was the widespread of castration of enslaved males. Historical records indicate that many African boys and men were castrated before being sold. Mortality rates from the procedure were extremely high. Eunuchs were often served They often served in courts, armies, and households and they made them eunuchs because they were afraid that the women was going to be attracted to them and want to make love to them. So they made them eunuchs. This has led some scholars to argue that the demographic impact was particularly devastating because many enslaved African males never had descendants, right? By contrast, in the Americas, enslaved populations eventually reproduced and created large African descendant populations. So one of the largest slave revolts in history occurred in Iraq, and I covered it on this channel, and I put the link to that video in the description. It's the Zanj Rebellion. The rebellion involved thousands of enslaved East Africans who were forced into brutal labor conditions. The revolt lasted approximately 14 years and nearly destabilized the Abbasid state. This event alone demonstrates that slavery in the Arab world was neither benign nor insignificant. A common claim is that Islamic slavery was more humane than American slavery. The reality is more complicated. While some enslaved people could achieve social mobility, historical evidence also shows that there was excessive forced labor, excessive sexual exploitation, excessive family separation, excessive military slavery, excessive concubinage, and excessive brutal punishments. The experience varied region by region and period by period, but the inhumane treatment was there. And so why isn't this discussed more often, and why didn't Brother Bolson include this in his talk, right? The United States teaches slavery primarily through an American lens, of course, because they teach it through the lens of what empowered them, right? So Western scholarship will always focus more on Europe because that empowered them. But my question for Brother Bolson is, if God punishes America for slavery, what about the societies that participated in the Arab slave trade? Will they also be punished by God? Does divine justice apply equally to European slave traders, Arab slave traders, African slave traders, and everybody else who participated in the slave trade? If slavery brings divine judgment, why focus exclusively on white America? Because you got to look at your people too. And wouldn't a consistent moral framework require examining all civilizations that profited, including yours? So if God's vengeance is reserved for slave traders and those who profited from slavery, then the question isn't just about white America or the system of white supremacy, but we know why he's looking at the system of white supremacy, because he's a foe of the system of white supremacy as well as an ally of the system of white supremacy. Because you can't say he don't benefit from it. You can't say his people never benefited from it, right? It is also about Arab slave traders who sold captives, and the Ottoman officials, the European merchants, plantation owners, banks, insurance companies, and governments. Why do some discussions focus only on one group while ignoring others who participated in some humane tragedy? And we can't forget about some of the African groups who willingly participated in the transatlantic slave trade. Some groups of Africans, more or less, we know the Dahomey and the Oyo, they signed up for it, right? But to ultimately wrap this up, right, talking about belief in God and religion and how you view God. How they view God is definitely not how I view God. My God, when I view God as an entity that empowers me and my people to be better. Not someone who would relegate us to waiting on him or waiting on it, him, her, it, however you want to say it, but waiting on God to come save us. My ideology is God is empowering us, or God gave us what we need. The power is there to save ourselves, like in the Last Dragon. Like, it's already in us. We just got to tap into it. We got to believe that the power of God is in us and use that power. It's God waiting on us. God, like, y'all waiting on me, I'm waiting on y'all. So with that being said, I'm not questioning anyone's faith. Believe whatever you want to believe about God. Believe whatever you want to believe about judgment, prophecy, or divine justice. But my question is much simpler. Every gain Black Americans have made come because somebody organized, educated, sacrificed, litigated, protested, built institutions, or put something on the line. So if God intends to bring justice, that's God's business. But history suggests that waiting for God to solve our problems without building power ourselves has never been a successful strategy for Black liberation, and that's not even how God wants us to rock. So I disagree thoroughly, my brothers. I thoroughly disagree with Brother Bolson and the African brother. Let me see what this African brother's name is. The YouTube channel is for the African brother is African Streamline. It's the African Streamline YouTube channel. I don't have no name, no real name, but it's no name of the brother, but it's the African Streamline YouTube channel. Yeah, so, but I disagree. And in my opinion, to give a message like that means you either really don't understand the system of white supremacy, or you understand it enough to give us a message purposely to keep us docile. But y'all tell me what y'all think. Y'all tell me what y'all think in the comments. Please hit that like button, comment, subscribe, share, hit that hype button, and continue to support this channel as I continue to bring y'all the truth. With that being said, y'all have a great Friday, and I'll catch y'all on the other side. Peace out. I love y'all.